Guys, we are back, and we look at today. I wanted to look at the visualizations. So, as a recap of the last two videos, the first video we created a a project in R, and then we sent this to GitHub for backup. Last time we discussed the deep layer tools or the libraries and the functionality for manipulating data. These include select, the filter, the mutate, and so on. So today is more of a continuation on that. Once you finish filtering and analyzing the data, more often than not, you find that you need to create visualizations. So ggplot is one of the key ways of doing this visualization. So today we will switch gears a bit and we are going to use the Gapminder dataset. It's a bit more complex than the iris dataset and we'll be able to create more robust graphs. So we'll just dive into it. So let's just dive into it. As usual, we'll import the libraries we need. So the first library is the Gapminder. We're going to use this one. The second library is the ggplot, but under ggplot we just use the tidyverse. That we are already done. I made an typo there. Should be tidyverse. That's done. So we first of all want to visualize this data. We can just type Gapminder. Then we pipe this into head. We can see the first five. So this is the data. We have different countries. So the first column is the countries. We have continents. So this is the Asia, Africa, Europe, and so on. The year is from 1952 to 2007. Life expectancy. This is showing the how many years you might expect to live whenever you're in that country for that year. The population is the population of the country, and the GDP per capita is the gross domestic product or the incomes that has been received by a country for a whole year divided by the number of people who live in that country. That's why it's called per capita, meaning per person. This is the data we are going to use. We'll try to visualize as much data as we can. That's the point of this video. So the first is a simple scatter plot, and we pick the Gapminder data. We pipe it to ggplot. So ggplot is a library for visualizing in R. It's comprised of layers. So you create the graphs in terms of layers. So the first thing you start is with the data layer. Then you have the mapping layer. And finally, you have the geometry layer. Of course, there are other layers, but these are the key ones. So we'll start with the data. So when you pipe the data like Gapminder into ggplot, that's already the data layer. So you're saying that the Gapminder should be piped to ggplot. So you're piping the data, meaning the data will be added. So the data is already added. So we'll just start with the mapping layer. And this you add some aesthetics. That's how you want to map the x-axis to some data and the y-axis to some data. That's what we call the mapping. So X should be, for now, we'll just plot life expectancy, and the Y will be GDP per capita. So we've mapped our X and Y axis. The next and final thing is just to now map the geometry. So in this case, we want to create a scatter plot. So we use the geometry point. The short form is geo, then point. So this is our plot. So what we've done, we've taken the data, we've pushed that data to ggplot, we've mapped the x and the y axis, and we've added now that to geo point. Now, this data, if you look above here, the data has different years. So this scatter belong to different years. So one thing we can do is we pick a year and then we visualize just that. So we'll use one of the functions we used last time. It's called filter. So what we want to filter year which is equals to 2007, which is the last year in that data. Of course, if you don't pipe it, it will show you the data. So this is now the data for that year, which is 2007. Another thing we might want to do is we want to have each continent as a different color. The reason is because we want to see which continent belongs where. So here you just add it as a mapping. So you say that color equals to continent, and you can run that. Once you run, you see that the Africa is trailing behind with low GDP per capita and low life expectancy, and Americas and the Europes and so on, they are above here where they have very high GDP per capita and very high life expectancy. In terms of correlation, we can say that GDP and life expectancy have a positive correlation from the scatter plot that we can see right now. So to finish this first part off is just to add the labs will allow you to add a title. So in this title, we just write GDP versus life expectancy in 2007. So we are done with this part. So one of the things that could be interesting is when we might need to have to see, of course, these countries are not equal. So some of the countries are larger, they have more population, some have a smaller population. So we might need to add that part in the graph, and we add it as an aesthetic mapping where we see that the size should be equal to population, and we can also say the alpha equals to 0.3, meaning, okay, the size of population, we want it to, for each dot we are seeing here, we want it to be associated with the population of that country. For the alpha, what we are saying is that we want the transparency to not be opaque, so that we can see some of the dots that are behind the dots that are in front. So that's why we need to use the alpha. So you can see that even for the dots that are available, you can see what lies behind them, and that's the point. So that you can have more solid bubbles, but it's still transparent enough. So for this first plot, we'll stop there. So the next key thing is we might want to add a bit of interactivity to this plot. Uh, so to add the interactivity, we use a library called Plotly, and we use the above plot that we just seen, and we say that the figure we want is now that whatever we're doing up there, but we might need to add labels because in the mapping, because we want when you hover, we also see the country. So labels equals to country, and now we can send this figure to ggplotly, which is a function within the plotly library. So we write ggplotly, and under ggplotly we put the figure, which is the fig. It takes a bit of time, but we have that. So you can see that when you hover, you're able to see like this large country is India. This other large country should be China. This one is the United States. Most of these countries are in Africa. So we can see all of this. So the plotly or the plotly library, what it does, it allows you to hover over the data and you get more information. It allows for more interactivity, which helps to declutter the plot. For example, it's possible even here above where we had written, we can also add the labels, and labels equals to country. And once we do that, and then we can add another geometry, which is text. So let's run this. Okay, that was a mistake. So if you see this, if you were to add the country name to each dot in the map looks extremely cluttered, and this is not what we want. It's not easy for someone to read or to be able to see which country you're looking at. So instead of having all this clutter in your map or in your graph, what we do is just allow for hovering. So you just hover and you get that information for only that plot. That's the advantage. Now, finally, as a final thing, what we can do is because now the data is what we call is longitudinal data, meaning that the data is collected over a long period of time. So one of the key plots you can have is time plot, where you animate what is happening over time. So we create an animation, and again, we are going to use the plot tree library. So we will copy whatever we have up here, exactly what we have, and we'll paste it there. And the only addition we need is just to add the frame, meaning we want to animate over the year. So we add the frame like that. Once that is done, we have animated now. Of course, if you add the frame, you'll need to relax this filter because it's just specifying for only one country. So if there is only one country, there is nothing to animate. So we'll have this for all the countries, and it's loading. Yes, it's done. So these on these axes down here, you see that you can play, and the graph will move from 1952 to 200 to 2007. So when you play, it's showing you what is happening to life expectancy over the years and the GDP. So what we saw was that life expectancy is moving towards the right, meaning there is increased life expectancy overall for all the countries. And then the GDP per capita is also increasing, but it's increasing at a decreasing rate. And I think we'll end our video there. Please share and subscribe. And if you want us to look at something else, just add it in the comments, and we'll be able to do that. Thank you.